All right, you're with us here on opening fire. Let's just take a quick look at what the market is doing. 6,308, so it's kind of dropped a little bit more, just about 10 points on it. Sensex is up about 30 points or so, 21,240. Bank Nifty at about 10,934. It's kind of flat. Rupee is at about 61.83. It's absolutely flat against the dollar. So that's basically what you have in terms of the action so far. Let's just talk about something which is some time away, but which of course will start attracting a fair bit of attention. I'm talking about rainfall, the monsoon season. CRISIL has put out a note which essentially says that a big risk to a normal monsoon season has emerged with the climate researchers actually predicting that we will see the El Niño effect. El Niño effect this time. I mean, it's a pretty irregular event, very difficult to predict, and of course with very, very irregular impact as well on rainfall. I've got Mr. DK Joshi, Senior Director and Chief Economist at CRISIL, joining in our studios to talk about this. Let's just explain the, every June, July we hear about the risk to El Niño. We are hearing about it a little earlier this time. So let's just start by talking about what the El Niño sort of phenomenon is and what are climate researchers saying, and to what degree this can impact rainfall here in India.
Well, I think El Niño refers to the warming of surface temperatures in the tropical waters. And what it does is, as you rightly mentioned, it is irregular in nature and hard to predict. But what the researchers have sensed, particularly the Australian Met Department and also the US department which looks at these things, I think they're saying that there is enhanced possibility of El Niño playing out. If El Niño does play out, and if it does impact, I think there are two questions here. I mean, whether it will play out or not, there is a fair bit of uncertainty with respect to that, because the predictability of El Niño during until the period of March, April, May, I think in this period it is pretty weak. So you'll get firm estimates sometimes in May of whether it's going to play out or not. So that's number one. Then if it does play out, is it going to have an impact on Indian monsoons? The past data shows that out of the 7 years in which El Niño did play out, only 2 were severely impacted, and this was 2002 drought and 2009 drought. Both of them were pretty severe in nature. So I think that you can't rule out the possibility of El Niño and a drought, but right now I think one would like to keep one's fingers crossed on this. And this is, I think we looked at this because monsoon remains a risk, and when there are very few drivers of growth for the economy, and monsoon this year also has been a critical driver, and if it fails next year, then it will pull the growth down, which
are these, just to go back to the first point, are these researchers putting a probability of, you're saying enhanced possibility of an El Niño? I mean, to what degree?
They don't put a probability to it. I mean, it's just that the patterns are observed, and they say that now the probability which was low has risen. I mean, so that's it's more indicative in nature as of now.
And this occurs at irregular intervals of 2 to 7 years, right?
That's right. Yeah. And as I was mentioning, I mean, since '91, it has happened 7 times, the El Niño phenomena. But India had very severe drought only related to El Niño only on 2 occasions. One was 2002, and other was 2009. Other droughts were without El Niño.
So you're saying that there's a 30% chance of a El Niño condition morphing into a monsoon failure. 30% odd chance.
Yeah, if you depend on the past data, I think that's what it tells you.
Okay, all right. So 2002 and 2009.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And these were the 2 very severe drought years.
Yeah. So an El Niño-led deficient rainfall season, does that have particular characteristics? Because you do point out, I mean, excess rainfall somewhere, drought-like conditions in certain parts. Just talk about that.
That's right. I mean, see, but it doesn't impact the southern part of India, because that's a rain shadow area in any case. But what it impacts is the northwest and the central region, and also the northeastern region. Right. So in the northwest and the central region, we get floods. Right. We get a severe drought. And in the northeastern region or the eastern part of India, we get floods. So now both are bad for agriculture. And this part of India accounts for close to 80% of agriculture production. 67 comes from central and northwestern India, and the 13% comes from Eastern India. So it is a pretty fair amount of fair share in agriculture production comes from this region.
Okay, let's take it a step further. Fiscal 15, what is your GDP growth assumption? And just break it down: industry, services, exports, agriculture, and what is the contribution which you expect agriculture to make right now? Of course, this may change as as you say, this impacts monsoon and hence agriculture. But as of now, what are those numbers?
Well, I think we would expect we have a forecast of 6% GDP for the next year, and we've assumed agriculture at 3%, which is premised on a normal monsoon play out. And industry and services will see a lift from this year, mildly improving by I think industry will improve to close to 4%, and services also a little over 7%. So, but the key assumption here is, I think if you look at the drivers of growth for next year, there are only three. Number one, good monsoons. The number two, global recovery, which is gaining some traction. Europe is coming out of the recession, and the US is expected to do much better than it did last year. I think that's the widespread belief. If that plays out, the export-oriented sectors will get a lift from there. And the third driver is we've seen some traction on project clearances and also on getting the mining sector off the track. It was off the track; it is getting it into the track, which essentially means lifting of mine in Karnataka. These are all positives. They are yet to play out, and we believe that some of these will also play out in the year 2014-15. So these are the three drivers. Now, if you take one driver off, which is agriculture, then you end up with, instead of 6%, you end up with 5.2% GDP growth. And we're expecting inflation at 8% next year, which will go up to double digits. So I think the fallout of a poor monsoon will reflect both in GDP and inflation, and also will reflect in the monetary policy stance of the central bank.
Yeah. So expectation that there will be rate cuts at some point. That gets pushed out even further.
Yeah, if you have this play out. So, but I think, as I said, we would like to keep up.
It's early right now.
It's early, but you have to be vigilant on this front, because in the past we have seen not being vigilant, you have been caught off guard.
Yeah, no, but this right now, and you said we'll get a better sense in May, but this right now basically takes the euphoria out of assumptions that, agriculture is sure to have a great year and we'll grow it, whatever.
Yeah, it does. Because that's the only driver which, in a way, doesn't depend on human action, so to say. It's something, I think you have to be lucky to get a good monsoon. And you'll not be lucky. That's...
if this happens, you will be actually very unlucky. It could turn out to be pretty unlucky, right?
Yeah, if it does play out.
Right. And would you say the RBI, has an eye out on these kind of things as well?
Absolutely. RBI would be looking at, because if you look at what the Urjit Patel committee has said, they have not talked about core inflation in particular. They're saying we'll look at aggregate inflation, overall inflation, and food is 50%. And the aggregate inflation will swing on the basis of food prices. And food inflation has been pretty sticky, so you can't take chances with it. So I think central bank would be fairly vigilant.
And the government should pay attention to these things as well, right?
Yeah, I think they are. I think we saw a statement from Agriculture Minister saying that we are closely monitoring the situation, because I think if rains are going to fail, if there's a strong indication, then you need to be prepared for it. Because
but what can they do?
No, I think
to prepare themselves.
If we prepare for a drought, you have there are a lot of contingency things that you can do beforehand. If you wait till the last moment, then I think the damage is much more.
So it's much more severe.
Much more severe. So I think there's an entire drought planning that goes along with it, but it's too early days for that.
So definitively we'll know by only by what? End of May?
Well, I think, let me put it this way. In the month of April, the IMD will come out with its assessment of the long range forecast for the economy. Then, following that, the Australian Met and the US Met, they will reassess the El Nino situation, because then you'll have more clarity. So put both these informations together, you'll have a fair bit of clarity on what's going to happen to the monsoons.
Got it. So thanks very much for dropping by. Great chatting with you on this, and hope to see more of you, and maybe we'll of course keep an eye out on this particular phenomenon as it plays out. Waiting for that forecast from the IMD as well, as you said, in April, and the Australian Met Department. Let's just take that quick break. We are back in 2. Lee Feskison joins in on the other side. He's Chief Economist for India and ASEAN at HSBC Global Research. He joins us from Singapore. And we'll talk about China retaining its 7.5% growth target for 2014. Actually, most other forecasts are pretty similar to what they were in 2013, money supply, inflation, etc. We're back in 2 with that.